My name is Dr. Paul Stock and I'm an Associate Professor in International History at LSE. HY323 is a course fundamentally about tourism history. It's a course about the emergence of the tourist industry in a period starting in the late 17th century and continuing to the early 19th century. And it essentially tries to answer the question why people go on holiday. That's a question that has enormous importance not only for that period but also for thinking about modern leisure and why people go on holiday today. So if you want to know an answer to that question, then you should think seriously about doing this course. It argues essentially that every modern tourist activity, from guidebooks to gap years, from souvenirs to sex tourism, can be traced back to the period of the 18th century when the Grand Tour developed. And what the course does is it examines the identities and the purposes of travel in that period. Every year, thousands of British men and women went abroad to the continent, mainly to Italy and France. And this course asks who those people were, why they went on their journeys, where they went, and what they did while they were on them. The course is structured across 20 weeks. It begins with an introductory session. There's absolutely no expectation that students doing this course should have already studied 18th century history or the history of tourism generally. So it begins from the position that everyone's starting from that primary base. And then the course continues throughout a number of themes. It begins with a few weeks which examine the reasons for tourist travel, from education, religion, politics and sex. And then it moves on to think about what these people were doing while they were on their travels, collecting souvenirs, going on guided tours, and also of course visiting various places. We've got a number of sessions devoted to particularly popular destinations on the tour, Paris, Rome and Venice. The course concludes by asking some of the big questions about 18th century in this period. For example, did the Grand Tour encourage nationalism or cosmopolitanism in this period? I think students will benefit from taking this course in two essential areas. Firstly, this is a course about the emergence of the tourist industry. It's a course about the history of leisure. And obviously international history is a field. It covers the history of politics, the history of religion, but it also covers cultural history and social history. So if you're interested in those topics, then you should think very seriously about doing this course, because it will allow you to explore the breadth of human experience in the early modern period leading into the early 19th century. So for example, we do talk about politics and religion. We also talk about education and about sex, all of the other crucial and important facets of human culture and belief in history. The second area of benefit, I think, comes from the fact that the course is dealing primarily with primary source material. So we actually read the letters, the diaries, the journals of the people on the Grand Tour. And that will give students an enormous benefit in analysing texts, detecting nuance, and engaging with some of the key skills of history. And we don't stop there either, because we also talk about the primary sources in other contexts. So for example, paintings, poetry, architecture, even garden design comes up on this course. This is a course for people who want to think broadly about history and who are interested in cultural history and social history.